in a land where the sun kissed the earth with fire, and the winds carried stories older than memory. There was a village nestled between hills and forests, a place where tradition ruled and change was feared. This village, surrounded by ancient baobab trees and the cries of distant hyenas, was the home of a Bina widow, alone, quiet, and shrouded in sorrow. Her husband Kojo had once been the strongest hunter in the region. He was the kind of man who walked like thunder and laughed like rain. The villagers had loved him. But death came early and without mercy. A hunting accident, they said. His body was never found. Only his blood-stained spear, found near the riverbank one morning since then. Abina had walked through life like a shadow, invisible to men, yet the subject of every whispered rumor. Some said she was cursed. Others believed she had sacrificed Kojo for powers she never used. And a few, only a few, said nothing at all because they saw the pain behind her eyes. The silence she carried like a burden. Abina had no children to comfort her. Her only son Kweku had disappeared when he was just 10. One night during a storm, he ran out chasing their goat. The winds howled. The rain swallowed his footsteps, and Kweku was never seen again. The village mourned for a moment, but time moved on. The crops still needed planting. The goats still needed herding. Only Abina stayed rooted in the past. Like the baobab, she visited every morning. The one where she had buried a lock of her son's hair and the last thread of her hope. This is where our story begins, with a woman forgotten, a village content, in its ignorance, and a storm waiting to return. Because sometimes the past does not stay buried. Sometimes the strangers who walk into our lives are not strangers at all. Let me take you into the heart of Africa, where spirits walk with men, where every silence speaks, and where one widow's sorrow becomes the seed of a tale too powerful to be forgotten. The morning sun painted the sky with shades of amber and gold as Abina wrapped her faded shawl around her shoulders. The village was already stirring, mothers pounding yam, children chasing chickens, and old men gathering beneath the talking tree to begin their morning arguments. But Abina moved differently, slow, deliberate, like the wind before a storm. She walked past the market without a word. The women there paused their gossip just for a breath, long enough to glance in her direction and murmur, "There goes the widow again." The words stung less now than they used to. Over the years, Abina had learned that silence was the only answer that kept her sane. She reached the great baobab tree that stood at the edge of the village. Its roots were thick and gnarled, like the hands of ancestors gripping the earth. She knelt before it and touched her forehead to the soil. "I don't ask for joy," she whispered, "only for peace. And for a dream, just want to see him again." She meant Kweku, the son whose face she could no longer draw in her mind, whose laugh she could no longer hear in memory. Her grief had worn him away like river water against stone. Just as she finished her prayer, the wind shifted. It blew stronger, colder. The birds in the trees scattered in alarm. She looked up. The path that led to the northern hills, seldom traveled, was stirring with dust. Someone was coming. She saw him first as a shape in the distant stall. Cloaked, walking slowly but with purpose. He was not a man from the village, that much was certain. His robe was torn and patched in strange places. A carved staff supported his weight, and around his neck hung a small leather pouch, unusual. Old, perhaps sacred. Abina stood, unsure whether to retreat or wait. Strangers were rare in this land, and when they came, they brought either blessings or destruction. As he neared, she saw his face. Dark-skinned like hers, but weathered by sun and travel. His eyes were sharp, too sharp for someone so tired. They flickered over her, then settled, calm but unreadable. "Good morning, mother," he said, voice rough with dust. Do you know where a stranger might rest his feet in peace? Abina narrowed her eyes. That depends on what the stranger carries in his heart. He smiled then, only briefly. Then I hope it is not too heavy. They stood in silence. The wind whispered again, and something passed between them. Not recognition, but something close. A stirring. A ripple in time. She pointed toward the abandoned hut near the river. No one lives there. You can sleep, but if trouble follows you, take it elsewhere. He nodded in thanks and continued on his way, his staff tapping against the earth like a steady drumbeat. Abina watched him disappear down the path, and for the first time in years, she felt her hands tremble. That night, the winds howled louder than they had in seasons. The baobab tree creaked, and the village dogs would not stop barking. Some said the spirits were restless. Abina didn't sleep. She sat near her fire, staring into the flames, hearing again the stranger's voice, rough yet familiar. And she wondered why her son's name had slipped from her lips while she was stirring the evening stew. Kwaku. She had not said it aloud in years, and outside, in the shadows near the abandoned hut, the stranger lit a small fire and pulled from his pouch an old rusted pendant shaped like a lion, worn smooth with time. He held it tightly. The wind carried. No words, but if it had, it might have whispered. Home. The village of Naomi lay quiet under the weight of a heavy dawn. A thick mist crawled across the red earth, wrapping huts in a damp silence. It was the kind of morning when nothing stirred too loudly, when even the roosters crowed with hesitation. But by the time the sun pierced through the clouds, the villagers were already murmuring about the stranger. Children ran ahead of their mothers, sneaking glances toward the riverbank where the old hut stood. It had been empty for years, cursed. Some said ever since the flood took the family that once lived there. Now smoke rose from its broken chimney. Someone had built a fire. By midday, the stranger was seen again, this time near the edge of the market. He wasn't buying, just watching. His staff rested beside him as he sat on a wooden stump, his head bowed. A bowl of maize porridge offered by a curious boy sat untouched at his feet. Some villagers ignored him. Others watched from the corners of their eyes. The elders held council beneath the talking tree, as they always did, debating whether to question him or simply wait. Abina saw him too. She had come to buy salt, but her feet lingered near the basket of smoked fish, eyes drawn to the stranger's. Stillness. His presence unsettled her. Not in the way of fear, but familiarity. And yet, she was sure she had never seen him before. Is he mad? Asked one woman nearby. No, said another. He's watching like someone who's lost. Something or someone who's returned for something he buried. Abina walked past them without a word. She hated gossip, but their words clung to her thoughts. When she returned home, she found herself glancing over her shoulder more than once, as if expecting the stranger to appear again. And he did. That evening, as the sun bled into the horizon, Abina stood near her cooking fire, stirring a pot of groundnut soup. The air smelled of ash and pepper. She didn't hear him approach, but she felt it, the sudden shift in the air. The silence that came with his presence. You cook with scent. Leave, he said softly, from beyond the fence. She looked up, surprised, but not afraid. It's all I have left. It gives the soup a memory. He nodded, stepping into the light. His robe was cleaner now, his face washed. Yet still, his eyes were storm clouds hiding lightly. I did not mean to startle you, he said. You didn't. I wanted to thank you for pointing me to the hut. It keeps the rain off. She hesitated, then motioned to the bench by the fire. Sit. It's hot, but I made enough. He lowered himself slowly, his staff leaning against the fence. He moved like a man who had known pain too long. She poured him a bowl of soup, placed it before him, then sat across the fire. They ate in silence. "I'm called Nero," he said. Finally, Abina looked at him carefully. "It means light, doesn't it?" He smiled faintly. "Yes, my mother gave me the name. I was born during an eclipse. She believed light would always return, even after the darkest hour." She stirred her bowl slowly. "And yet, you carry darkness in your eyes." He didn't answer immediately. The fire cracked between them. "I have walked long, too long. I've seen war, betrayal, and things that crawl where no light touches. But I come not to harm, only to find peace. Peace is not given," she said. "It is earned, or lost." He looked at her, then truly looked, and something inside his expression changed. He leaned forward slightly, his fingers brushing the pendant hidden beneath his robe. "Have we met before?" Abina blinked. "No, I would remember." But even as she spoke, her heart skipped. He bowed his head again, hiding his face. "Forgive me. I sometimes see faces from dreams in the faces of the living." They finished their meal quietly. Before he left, he said, "I can work if the village permits. I know herbs medicine. Maybe it will help them trust me." She gave a small nod. "Offer healing, but not too much kindness. They fear what they case. Do not understand." He paused before stepping back into the night. "And you, Abina, do you fear me?" She met his gaze. "No, but I fear what you carry." That night, Abina dreamed of her son. Not the child she remembered, but a grown man, tall, lean, cloaked in a robe like Nero's. He stood beneath the baobab tree, staring at her with eyes filled with sorrow. He opened his mouth to speak, but the wind swallowed his words. When she awoke, her face was wet with tears. Elsewhere, in the abandoned hut, Nero knelt before his fire. He opened the leather pouch again and held the lion pendant in his hand. "Kwaiku," he whispered. The name trembled from his lips like a prayer. "I am here." And the wind, always listening, curled through the cracks of the walls and carried that name into the night. The days passed slowly, and with each sun that rose over the village of Niami, the stranger became less of a whisper and more of a presence. Children began to mimic his limp as they played. Old men acknowledged him with guarded nods, and women began to send him small bowls of food wrapped in banana leaves. Suspicion gave way to curiosity, and curiosity to cautious respect. But not all eyes softened. Elder Kwame, as the oldest and most revered man in the village, watched Nuru with the intensity of a hunter who smells smoke long before seeing the fire. He had seen strangers before travelers, traders, even outlaws. But this one, ... there was something else. Something unspoken, clinging to his shadow. One morning, after the dew had melted from the grass, Kwame summoned Abina to the elder's circle. Beneath the talking tree, she walked into the circle slowly, the hem of her dress brushing against the roots of the old tree. The other elders sat in silence, but their eyes spoke loud. "Abina," Kwame said, his voice like dry wind through cane stalks, "you have grown close to the stranger." She kept her face calm. "I have shared food, nothing more." And yet, another elder added, "His feet seem drawn to your path, and your fire has burned brighter since he arrived." "I feed who is hungry," she said. "It is what the gods demand." Kwame leaned forward. "Do you know what he carries?" "No, nor do we. And that is the danger." There is a silence around him that feels too heavy to be empty. Abina said nothing, but her hands folded tightly in her lap. Kwame sighed. There is an old law, buried in time and forgotten by most. When a stranger comes and the earth stirs beneath his steps, the spirits must be asked. "The spirits have been silent," she replied. "No, child," he said. "You have not been listening." That night, Abina returned home shaken. She didn't light her fire. She didn't boil water. She sat in the darkness and watched the shadows move on the walls. At midnight, the wind rose again, but it was different. This time, colder, deeper. It did not whistle, it whispered. She rose and left her hut, guided only by instinct and moonlight. Her feet led her through the narrow paths between sleeping huts, past the goat pens and the maize fields, to the edge of the forest. And there, at the mouth of the sacred grove land, forbidden to all but the initiated, she saw him. Nuru stood in the clearing, shirtless under the moon, his arms raised. White chalk covered his skin in patterns Abina had only seen on warriors of the old stories. At his feet burned a small fire, and around it, herbs smoked with a scent so ancient it made her head spin. She wanted to call out, to run, but her voice caught in her throat. Then she saw. On his chest, just above his heart, was a scar, a perfect circle, with 3 lines radiating from it. It was the mark of the lost brotherhood. A secret order once believed extinct. Men who had once been chosen, then cursed. Healers who had turned to darkness during the tribal wars. Abina's breath caught. He dropped to his knees, placing his hands into the fire, not into the flame, but through it. The fire didn't burn him. Instead, it changed color, turning blue, and then black, flickering like shadows alive. He whispered something, a name, and though it was faint, Abina heard it. Kwiku. She staggered back, her hand covering her mouth. She remembered now the scar, that exact shade that had been painted onto the drum of her husband. Kojo had once warned her never to go near the sacred grove. He had said it was where the ancestors buried power they could no longer control. And now, this man, this Nuru, was calling on that power. The next day, the village child, little Ama, fell ill. Her body twisted with fever, and no herbs seemed to help. Her mother wept beneath the baobab tree. You appeared quietly, asking for nothing, promising less. But he touched the girl's chest, whispered into her ear, and placed a small black stone beneath her tongue. By morning, Ama was sitting up, laughing, asking for fruit. The village rejoiced, but the elders grew quiet. And Elder Kwame sent a message to Abina, come at once. She sat before the council again, and this time the fire in the center of the circle burned low. You saw him at the grove, Kwame said. You felt the old power. Abina hesitated, then nodded once. Do you know what it means? He asked. She looked into the fire. He's not who he says he is. Kwame's face was grim. He wears the mark of the exiled. Only one other man in this land once bore it. Your husband. Abina's heart thundered in her chest. What are you saying? She asked. Kwame leaned closer. I think the boy you lost was taken by them, raised by them. I think Nuru is your son. She felt the earth shift beneath her. Her ears roared. Her hands went cold, and then the last piece of her memory fell into place. Kweku, as a boy, had worn a pendant. A lion with a cracked paw. A gift from Kojo. The same pendant she had seen Nuru hold when he thought no one was watching. She stood quickly, unable to speak. Kwame placed a hand on her shoulder. If it is him, then the darkness has not fully claimed him. But you must find the truth before the rest of the village does. That night, Abina did not sleep. She walked to the baobab and knelt before it. She held the soil in her hands and wept not from sorrow, but from terror. Terror that the spirits had returned her son, but not as the boy she remembered. And in the forest beyond, Nuru sat beside the fire, the lion pendant resting in his palm. He stared into the flames and whispered again, Mother, do you see me? The winds rose. They were no longer silent. The village awoke restless, though the morning sun painted the sky with its usual glow. Something hung in the air, invisible weight pressing down on hearts and homes alike. It was as if the spirits themselves had taken breath and were waiting, silently, for something to shatter. The story of little Amah's healing had spread far beyond the market and the talking tree. Mothers whispered prayers of thanks. Fathers muttered blessings. But in every smile, there was hesitation. In every praise, a question lingered. Who is this man that heals like a god, yet walks like a ghost? Abina sat in her hut, staring at the woven mat on her floor. Tease's words echoed endlessly in her ears. He wears the mark. He may be your son. KWEKU. It couldn't be. And yet, every day Nuru looked more familiar. His walk, the furrow in his brow, the slight curve of his left ear. Small details, forgotten pieces. Her memory had buried them in grief, but now they surfaced like bones in dry earth. She had to know. Not from the whispers of elders, not from dreams, but from him. That night, under the shield of darkness, she followed the path to the abandoned hut. A candle flickered faintly through the cracks of its wall. Inside, Nero sat cross-legged, meditating before a small fire. The lion pendant lay before him, surrounded by 4 small stones carved with symbols. He chanted softly, words from a language Abina barely recognized, one older than her grandmother's. "Grandmother, Nero," she called from the doorway. He didn't look up, but his chant ceased. "I felt you coming," he said. The wind changed. She stepped inside. The warmth hit her first, not from the fire, but from the air itself. It pulsed with energy, like something breathing between the walls. She looked at the pendant. Her voice caught. "Where did you get that?" He picked it up gently, rubbed its cracked paw. "It was given to me by a man who said it belonged to someone I once was. A gift from a mother I could not remember." Abina's knees weakened. She reached for the wall to steady herself. "You knew her?" he asked, quietly. Her lips trembled. "She wept for you every night." He looked up at her slowly. "Then I think she still does." The silence that followed was long and sacred. Abina moved to the fire, sat across from him. Her voice was a whisper, but it carried weight. "You are Kweku, my son." He didn't answer immediately. He only looked at her with eyes so haunted, so weathered, yet unmistakably hers. "I was taken," he said, finally, that night. "During the storm, I chased the goat, but men were waiting. They wore black, their faces painted like skulls. I screamed, but the wind was too loud. The forest swallowed me whole." Tears rolled down Abina's face. They trained us. Not just with weapons, but with herbs, chants, secrets of old gods. They said we were chosen to restore balance, that the village had forgotten the old ways. They carved the mark into my chest the day I swore my life to them. He touched the scar above his heart. I believed them, for years, till I saw them kill. Not just warriors, but children, innocents. They called it justice. I called it something else. He looked into the fire. So I ran. I took the pendant and fled in the night. The spirits guided me here. Abina leaned forward. "Why did you not tell me sooner?" "Because I did not know if I was still your son, or something else entirely." She reached across the fire and took his hand. It trembled in hers. "You are still Kweku, my son. And nothing, not scars, not pain, not darkness can take that from me." He wept then, for the first time since the storm took him. But peace would not come so easily. The next morning, a scream shattered the village. A young boy had vanished. His bed was empty. His footprints led to the forest. The villagers gathered, panic rising. Accusations flew. "He's returned for another." Someone shouted. "It's the stranger he calls spirits. We let a demon live among us." The elders called for calm, but the fire of fear had been lit. And you stood at the edge of the crowd, silent. He did not defend himself. He only looked. To Abina, who nodded once, They followed the tracks into the forest. Abina, Nuru, Elder, Kwame, and 4 others. The trail led deeper than any dared go. Past the sacred grove, through the whispering trees, until they reached a clearing blackened with ashdot, and there, curled beside a hollow log, was the missing boy, unharmed but fast asleep, a small black stone in his hand. He wandered nearer. Said the spirits led me here in my dreams. I knew he was safe, but the villagers who followed behind would not hear it. They saw only a child in the forest, mark of the brotherhood on Nuro's chest, and fire in the trees. They saw what? They wanted to see. Danger, the village roared. Banish him. Kill him before he curses us all. And in that moment, Nuro did not fight. He stepped forward, arms raised. If my presence brings fear, then I will go. But know this, there is worse coming. I have felt it. The balance is shifting. Something old stirs in the earth beneath us. You will need me. The elders hesitated. The crowd did not. They dragged him to the center of the village, tied him to the talking tree, and prepared the ritual for banishment. Abina watched in silence. Fire in her veins, sorrow in her bones. She stepped forward, stood between her son and the gathered mob. No, she cried. He is not the curse. He is the cure. But her voice was drowned by fear. Until the earth shook, a deep, thunderous rumble rolled through the ground. Huts trembled, trees bent, chickens scattered, dogs howled. And then, silence. All eyes turned to the forest. Smoke rose in the distance, and not just smoke flames. A fire unlike any before, sweeping through the trees. But it did not burn the earth, it danced like something alive. Red and gold and violet. From within the flames, a shadow emerged. Tall, cloaked, face masked. Carrying a staff crowned with skulls, it was not Nur. It was something else, and the winds began to whisper again. The sky darkened unnaturally as the figure stepped from the forest flames. The villagers fell silent, staring in terror. Children clung to their mothers. Even the elders, men who had seen famine, war, and death, trembled. The figure was no mere man. His body shimmered with heat, yet his robes didn't burn. His staff glowed with eerie symbols, and his eyes black as obsidian pierced through the soul. Nuru, still bound to the talking tree, looked up and recognized what the others could not. I know that mark, he whispered. He is one of the ones who raised me. Abina turned to him. One of them? He nodded, breath quickening. He was called Bako, a high priest of the Brotherhood. He believes I betrayed their purpose. He's come to finish what they started. Bako's voice boomed across the village like thunder. You hide a traitor, a thief of sacred knowledge. He who once called upon spirits to heal, now calls upon pity to survive. He raised his staff, and the flames around him rose higher. You were warned, Bako roared. The Brotherhood does not forgive, does not forget. Elder Kwame stepped forward, summoning his strength. We are a village of peace. Take your quarrel elsewhere. Bako laughed, a deep, mocking sound. There is no peace where truth is buried. The traitor dies tonight. He raised his staff toward Nuru, but before the power could be unleashed, Abina stepped in front of her son. Then strike me first, she said, voice steady. For if he is cursed, then I am too. I am the soil from which he was born. Kill me. Before you reach him, the flames flickered. The wind paused. Even Bako seemed momentarily confused. You would die for him. I already did, she said. The day he vanished, I died. What you see before you is what remains of a mother who never stopped praying. He is not the traitor. He is the hope that your Brotherhood tried to destroy. Bako snarled. Hope is a lie told to weak minds. Suddenly, Niru cried out, "Enough!" The ropes that bound him snapped as if cut by unseen blades. He stepped forward, his arms glowing with light golden and blinded. His lion pendant pulsed on his chest like a second heartbeat. "I do not belong to you anymore," he said to Bako. "Your fire burns to destroy. Mine burns to protect." He raised his hands, and the ground beneath him cracked open slightly, sending tremors through the earth. Bako struck first, hurling a bolt of dark flame toward Nero. But Nero caught it and twisted it in his palm until it turned to ash. A gasp rippled through the crowd. "You taught me your ways," Nero continued, voice calm but strong. "But you could not destroy the truth in me. My mother's love, my village's soil, the blood of my father. They are stronger than your darkness." Bako screamed and charged, but this time it was Abina who stepped forward. She raised her arms, chanting the words Kojo once whispered in the night-told hunter words, protective words. The flames around Bako stuttered, and Nero struck. Light surged from his body, enveloping Bako in a blinding aura. The priest's screams echoed, twisted, and then faded into silence. When the light vanished, Bako was gone. Only a charred cloak remained on the earth. The villagers stared, stunned. Elder Kwame stepped forward, tears in his ancient eyes. "The ancestors have spoken." He turned to Niru. "You are not cursed. You are the bridge between the old ways and the new, between power and purpose." The villagers dropped to their knees, not in worship, but in respect. Abina turned to her son, touching his face. "I lost you once," she whispered, "but the gods have returned you to me. Not as a boy, but as a man strong enough to stand against monsters." Niru smiled, "'Cause I had a mother brave enough to stand before one." The sun broke through the clouds, golden and warm. Birds sang again. The winds carried a new sound, not a warning, but a hymn, and the baobab tree swayed gently, as if nodding in approval. From that day on, Niru was no longer a stranger. He lived among the people, healing, teaching, and walking with those who had once feared him. The pendant on his chest became a symbol of redemption, and the tale of the widow and the wandering stranger became legend told around fires, under stars, for generations to come, not as a story of sorrow, but of courage, love, and the fire that lives beneath every mask. Thank you for watching this powerful tale of the widow and the wandering stranger. If this story moved you, please take a moment to like, share, and subscribe. We bring you more dramatic and emotional African folktales, where every whisper of the wind carries the voice of ancestors. Drop your thoughts in the comments. What would you have done in Abina's place? Subscribe for more unforgettable stories of betrayal, love, and redemption. Until next time, may your path be blessed and your story be heard.